Welcome to another episode of Health Matters with PA Lynn Szabo. I'm Heather Poland, and you're listening to Health Matters on KFUG Radio. What are we going to talk about today, Lynn?
We're going to talk about acetaminophens use during pregnancy and risk of autism.
Oh.
Kind of hot topic in the news. And we should start with the background definition of causation versus correlation. So causation, kind of like the word implies, is a direct cause and effect relationship between two events. Okay. And correlation is a statistical association between two variables, but doesn't really imply direct cause and event and effect. So, for example, a lighter in somebody's pocket and the risk of developing lung cancer. There is a correlation between these. There's a correlation between these two variables, but there isn't a causation. So the assumption, the missing step, is that somebody has a lighter in their pocket and they must be a smoker, and then they have higher risk for lung cancer. But just the lighter in the pocket, somebody might be carrying around a lighter in their pocket because they're holding it for somebody, or because they use it to make fires because
they're going camping.
Yeah, they're going camping.
They bought one to light birthday candles, so it's not.
Right. Or they just found it on the ground. They picked it up as a piece of litter and we're going to dispose of it. So causation is direct cause and effect, and correlation is statistical association between two variables. It has long been noted that acetaminophen has a correlation with autism. And as science trudges on, and in good scientific form, a group of scientists from Sweden took this observation and did a study in Sweden, which was published in JAMA on April 9th, 2024. And we should note that the authors include Ahlquist, Söjquist, and Dahlman. And excuse me, my Swedish is awful.
Thank you for saying those names. I wasn't going
to. A PhD, master's in science, and also an MD PhD. So they asked the question, does acetaminophen use during pregnancy increase a child's risk of neurodevelopmental disorders? And they specifically looked at autism, ADHD, and intellectual disabilities. So it wasn't limited to just autism. And they had 2.4 million Swedish children born between 1995 and 2019, and they followed them through 12/31/21. And this is actually a criticism I had of the story, I think, and I suspect they're still following them. But if one of the kids that you were following was born in 2019, that means they were only followed for 2 years, and maybe there were events that happened beyond that window.
Gotcha.
They define autism, ADHD, and intellectual disability using the standard diagnostic criteria and codes.
So this is anybody who falls into that 20% of neurodivergency.
Right.
Okay.
This is specifically defined. So about 7.49% of these children were exposed in utero to acetaminophen. So
wait, how many?
7.49% out of the 2.4 million kids. So think about that. I think what we can learn from that is, at least in Sweden, among that time period, that pregnant women didn't use acetaminophen very often. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 7.9% of the children were exposed, and this is where the brilliance is. This is why this is such a good study. In part of their study, they did use sibling controls. So they controlled for, say, socioeconomic status by looking at a sibling who maybe had autism with another, sibling that
didn't have
cognitively
autism.
Normal. Yeah.
Okay. So so you mean socioeconomic? You mean so like kids that were growing up poor,
right,
or struggling or homeless or any of those other things? You took siblings that had the same exposures to environmentally things.
So you had one kid who had the observed phenomenon that could be applied to that kid, and then another kid, a sibling, so genetically similar, that did not have that observed phenomenon.
Okay.
That's what makes this study so solid in science. It's controlled.
Gotcha.
It's not double-blinded, obviously, because
How are you going to do that?
yeah, you can't really do that. But the sibling controls make it way more grounded in good science. So here's what they found. Acetaminophen use during pregnancy was not associated with risk of autism, ADHD, or intellectual disability in the scientifically controlled part of the study. So, but they were able to, because they had the sibling controls, they were able to kind of have some ideas about what might actually be causes. So what they called confounding variables, okay, or confounding factors. And these things, or risk factors, I guess you could call it risk factors. These things could be like decreased socioeconomic position, like we mentioned, higher earlier pregnancy BMI of the moms, so moms that tended to be a little bit more overweight, smoking during pregnancy, associated psychological conditions of the parents, so if parents were struggling psychologically, and that this kind of makes sense because autism, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but autism is observed to run in families, kind of, not 100%, but sometimes. And physical comorbidities. Let's say somebody who has an autoimmune disorder that's carrying a pregnancy might have more pain, for example, and be more likely to take Tylenol. So in that case, Tylenol isn't really the cause of the observed endpoint. It's got the cofactor of, immunological disease, autoimmune disease. This gets kind of complicated. You're looking at me like, this is complicated.
It really is, right? So it's kind of like, wait, so what are you saying here?
So what I'm saying is...
Are you saying you agree with Kennedy?
No. What I'm saying is that this goes back to the cigarette lighter in the pocket in association with lung cancer. There's
Correlation and causation.
Correlation and causation. And I think critical thinkers, maybe who are not scientists or new to science, have to understand when they're interpreting scientific data that these are two different things, and you can't just run ahead with one because it kind of looks like something you would agree with anyway.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because I've read the studies that show that you have a 66% more, you're 66% more likely to have a child with autism with a father over the age of 50 compared to a father over the age of 40, right? So is it causation? Is it correlation? And we dismiss it when it comes to men, and we understand the difference between causation and correlation. But when it comes to women, God forbid you drink a cup of coffee, you breathe, you look sideways, or you take a Tylenol when you're pregnant. Everything's your fault.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
And the person observing that is of no help whatsoever. They're just accusatory.
Yeah.
So,
and it's funny to me that it's just typically men that are doing all of these studies, and then when it comes to them and their sperm quality, it's not their fault. There's causation and correlation, and they make that distinction. But when it comes to women, it doesn't matter what it is. It's always our fault.
Yeah, exactly. And then oftentimes women are the primary caretakers, so that,
Yeah.
they spend a lot of time of their life, I guess, I don't know. There's a difficulty in their life maybe, but a joy too that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
It's definitely their lives took a left turn they didn't see coming. So that's pretty clear data. And probably what's going to happen is that the people who investigate these things in science, and probably these authors themselves, are going to have questions arising from this study, and there will be another study that will look at those questions, and they'll chip away at our understanding of autism, ADHD, and other cognitive disabilities, and we'll be able to get closer to a better, more functional understanding of how we exist with people who have these struggles in our lives.
So, just, okay, not to go so off topic here, or to redirect the topic here, but is autism, I get that it's a spectrum disorder, right? So you have people that fit different spots on that spectrum. Is it really a disability, or is it just a different way of thinking? Because I know lots of people with ADHD, and I don't look at them as disabled in any way, shape, or form. They just think and act and do things differently. They perform at work differently. They're awesome in some areas, and then they lag in some other areas. But so do you, and so do I, right?
That's the universal human condition.
Yeah,
totally agree with that. And I think we have to understand that science is never as simple as this is a cause, we can move on 100%, this is what happened. We don't know that. This is incredibly intricate stuff. And since we'll never really know for sure what happened, we don't need to go blaming people, either parents, like moms, or especially, or the individuals themselves that are struggling. Maybe we could learn something from them, and we can move on in even better ways. If we really think about how we can best, how we can change our system to accommodate what might be an uncovered brilliance on their part.
And I think that's just what it is too, right? What if it's just a step in human evolution and these, right? Because what is it, 20% of the world's population falls within that neurodivergent category. They don't fit the other 80% of what we would consider normal. So they think differently, their brains operate differently, they make correlations, see patterns in different ways. They can hyperfocus their memories. The way that they do things is not what is considered the other 80% of normal. So maybe it is just
if you think
our brains evolving and it figuring itself out.
If you think about evolution, diversity is a good thing in evolution. Because it gives us more choices to be successful and, to move along toward more refinement, I guess, is the way I would look at it. And I think if we could be like more understanding and more accepting and listen better. How about that? How about just listen better? And then I think it could be to our long-term great benefit.
I think you're asking too much there for the listening better part. We have stopped listening to each other for a long time ago.
True.
But I do think you're right. I do think it is a form of exceptionalism. And we always think, too, of people being neurodivergent as being less than. But if you have higher than average intelligence, then you fall within that 20% category of being neurodivergent. If you fall outside of that 80% of the norm, then you're neurodivergent. And so, we associate being higher intelligence with exceptionalism. And just because somebody can't talk doesn't mean that they're not brilliant. And they're not capable of doing a thing.
It just matters how we maybe can help them unlock that, I guess. But the other take-home lesson I had is science doesn't care what you believe. That I come across that almost every single day. Science does not care that you think something should be this way, and it's actually not. Science just
you just look right at me and tell me science doesn't care what I believe, Lynn. Really?
Truth. Science is. Science is. It's like answering the question, what is God? God is. I mean, how else can you answer that? I mean, you can touch a tiny part of it, but you can't really encompass the gestalt of it, I think.
That's true.
Science just is, and it doesn't really care what Donald Trump believes. The other thing I noticed right away is that acetaminophen is such a hard word to say. It isn't really.
It's another person with a speech impediment. I'm going to give him a pass on that one, other than the fact that he made fun of Joe Biden with a speech impediment for all of those years.
Yeah, one finger points out and 3 point back, Donald.
Right.
But in medicine and in science, we don't really talk in brand names. Because it leads to vagaries, Is actual Tylenol different somehow than acetaminophen? It's got different binders. It's got, the pill might have a different color, stuff like that.
There's a Tylenol PM, so if you only take Tylenol PM, so your kid's only autistic at night.
Right. Yeah, maybe. So anyway, it to me it's not very professional abusing brand names, and people who are in control of the Tylenol empire probably have feelings about that. And I bet stuff is coming on that. The other take-home lesson is causation does not mean correlation. So science does the right thing.
Wait, causation does not mean correlation, or correlation does not mean causation?
It doesn't mean either.
Okay.
They are two different ways of looking at the world.
Okay.
But science did the right thing because it noticed a correlation, kind of noticed from studies before that there seemed to be a correlation between women taking Tylenol in their pregnancies and having neurodivergent kids. And then they looked at it more closely and were able to pin it down that it wasn't actually related.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's not the importance of science, is to say, hey, this might be a thing, and then be like, nope,
Right.
we've looked into it, it's not.
Right. It's also important to science, like the people who wrote this study, they're going to find things that make them say, well, that's a little weird. Maybe we should look at that. And they're going to look at it kind of a little bit different aspect of it, or look at it in a different way, or design a study that's maybe more longitudinal, through time, or and they're going to add to the knowledge. They're going to be either able to have supporting evidence of their original study, or they're going to maybe tweak the original thought and think of it in a slightly different way, and then take the next step down. So science is progression, right? And our understanding, it's not like it's one study, one and done. But these people are going to, I think, connect with this topic intellectually, and they're going to find other ways to help their understanding of it. And, if they go full force and actually do a study that they can publish, it's going to help all of us in our understanding of the world.
So how harmful is it for the director of the CDC to come out and say, and the president to parrot, that acetaminophen is the cause of autism, and to stay away from it and don't take it, based off of a study that was looking into the correlation and then came to the conclusion that it wasn't the cause of?
It's grossly irresponsible.
How much harm will this do? I mean, because...
Well, it's probably going to put women in more pain with no option. And it's going to cause them anguish. There's going to be psychological anguish because pregnant women don't set out, with most of them, with a desire to throw chemicals in their body to hurt their fetus.
No, they freak out if they drink a cup of coffee because they're exhausted because
Right.
their toddler was up all night crying and they're
Right.
pregnant and they're
Right.
4 months pregnant
Right.
and they think it's the end of the world, and don't judge me. I was just really tired today.
Yeah, and who takes care of the siblings that, maybe when they're sick? So the women are not only vulnerable to problems with pain and fever maybe, but they're also not given any way to deal with it, because ibuprofen's out, NSAIDs in general are out. What are they left with? A cool compress?
So they took the safest medication a pregnant woman could take and then told us we couldn't take it.
Right, and then there's going to be a blaming if somebody does. There's risk.
How is that not intentionally to cause women harm and to further pain and psychological trauma?
Only because they don't recognize it as such.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I think the head of the RFK Junior, he doesn't get to decide how science is going to work.
He's not even a scientist.
No, he's not even. The worm has done some damage, I think.
I don't think it was just the worm. He's damaged his brain with all of the drugs that he did. And I am proud of him for getting sober and staying sober. And
If that's the case, sure.
if that's the case, yes. Right. But I still go back to his siblings have repeatedly asked the country to leave their brother alone. He was ill. They got to I'm one of 8 kids. I couldn't imagine my 7 siblings getting together and saying, hey, back off,
Right.
This is what's happened and you need to leave her alone. And then the rest of the country just being like, no, that's fine. We're going to embrace it and we're going to torment the man. And we're going to go along with what he says.
Yep.
It's just crazy to
It's
me.
a bad dream. It's a horrific nightmare.
How did we get here? Maybe that's its own health
This
matters.
is going to be the topic of college classes in the future, for sure.
I agree. We will be studying this 70 years from now the way we studied what happened in the 40s, the 30s and 40s.
Right. So I'm on the OB team at UHS. This is kind of known in the community. And we had a discussion, was pretty short, about what our feelings were for recommending Tylenol for pregnant women for fever and pain. And it was about a 2-second conversation, really. Continue to recommend. There's no reason not to. So women who are pregnant who have pain or have fever probably should check out with their pregnancy provider. Do not be surprised if the pregnancy, the OB team is going to endorse using acetaminophen for pain and fever. You know, there's a downside to fever, and we don't necessarily want women to have misery in their lives with pain. I actually wonder if somebody had a chronic pain issue and Tylenol was the only thing they could use and it was taken away from them, how would the depression of being in chronic pain affect the development of their fetus? You know, that might be another study that these people in Sweden, you know, a question that they ask. So remember, everything in medicine also has risks and benefits. But here there is no risk. So far, science has a very clear understanding and a very good answer with a high level of scientific certainty. So
is this going to be one of those things, if you're pregnant and you're Googling, can I do this during pregnancy, or is this safe for me to take, or any of those other things, that you're going to have to look at pre-2025 information because it's all going to be skewed?
Yeah.
At what point in time, if you Google, is it safe to take Tylenol if I'm pregnant, is it going to start to come up with saying, no, Donald Trump says it's going to give you autism?
I think there's, going to be confusing stuff on the internet, because also the American College of OB obstetricians and gynecologists is endorsing Tylenol as a safe pain control for pregnant women. So it's probably who's going to show up first in the Google search. I mean, that's kind of, we have a tendency to go with that information first.
That's true.
But what I would do is, and what I've done now with initial OBs, women who are newly pregnant, who are in my practice, I specifically address it.
Okay.
I want them to know directly from me. And usually that's a visit where their partner is there, so the father of the baby. And, they want to know everything that they can do to make this pregnancy as successful as possible. So.
At what point in time, too, are men going to start telling women what they can and cannot take when they're pregnant, because it's their child and they have a right to assert that right over us?
I think it depends on the relationship. I've seen some relationships where I think that could easily be happening.
I've seen that as well.
Yeah, and I've seen some relationships where the father of the baby's not there, so that doesn't matter. They've completely left the relationship with two people, actually.
Well, I think it comes right down to it is that the truth is 100% of all cases of autism were the result of sex.
Now, that could be is that a correlate?
No, I'm pretty sure that every child born with autism was a result of sex, Lynn.
But that's correlation. That's not.
And if you didn't have sex, you wouldn't have the child.
I know, but that doesn't mean that the sexual act itself caused whatever.
It caused the pregnancy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I know. But then you're getting into statistical analysis and p-values and comorbidities and confounding variables and yada yada. Leave it.
You mean I can't just simplify it?
No, you can't.
What if I mispronounce it? Will that make it more accurate?
One wonders.
If I dye my skin a funny color, do a comb over, and then mispronounce it, does it make it true?
I think that's an interesting topic for conversation, but I can't answer it right now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I get a little spicy on this one.
Yeah.
I genuinely just look at this as an intentional harm to women.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
One of the safest things that we could take when we were pregnant. Proven.
Right.
For a long, long time. Right. And then the original cause of autism, they were saying back in the 50s and 60s, was that it was the refrigerator moms. It was women who were cold and didn't hold their children enough, and that's what caused autism. It's always been to blame women.
It's always the women.
Oh, it's always us.
Yeah, that's just simple and uneducated. And I like the idea of maybe autistic people can, if we would only recognize it, have more value in our lives than we give them credit for. Because
Absolutely.
half an hour ago, there was a total, beautiful, joyous child in here who definitely sees the world in a different way. And we were all relating to him with big smiles on our face.
And seeing the world through his eyes in that different way and opening
Right.
up to a beauty to
And
it.
it's such a joy and such a gift to us.
Again, I don't see it as a disability. I
Right.
just see it as a different way of thinking. And
Right.
if we were exposed to that and we got to see that beauty in the world through his eyes.
Yeah, we would be less if we didn't interact with him most Sundays.
Yeah. And I don't care what anybody says. I think Down syndrome and the extra chromosome, the trisomy 21, I think that's human evolution making a perfect human being. So, and I will die on that hill.
I'm happy to endorse that.
Thank you, Lynn, so much for being here and for covering this amazingly complicated and sad topic in the world we live in today.
Right.
This is an episode of Health Matters with Lynn Szabo. And if you'd like to listen to this episode again or any of the other episodes with Lynn for the past 7 years, you can go to KFUG Radio YouTube channel, KFUG Community Radio's YouTube channel, and find them all there underneath the playlist. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.